Hey, this is Greg with PNW Enduro. Today I'm going to go over 5 good things and 5 bad things on the 2021 Sherco 300 SE Factory Edition. So I think we can all agree this is one of the nicest looking bikes around, but how is it holding up? How is it performing? So right now you can see I've got 43 hours of runtime and 732.6 kilometers. So after 40 hours, how's the bike holding up? What's broken? What have I replaced? And what do I think is good and bad? I'm going to go over that in today's little mini review, I guess I'll call it. So I haven't really broken too much on this bike. I just replaced the rear sprocket because I bent it and I couldn't quite get one spot true enough. Wasn't satisfied with it, so replaced the rear sprocket. Rear tire, I got a fresh tire, just 1 or 2 rides on this one here. So this is the IRC VE33S, and I ran the first one for 39 hours, so it's pretty good for a gummy tire. Running the M59 on the front, I did run the stock Michelin tire, and it only lasted 25 hours before it was chunking pretty badly. So good things and bad things, let's get into that. Number one good thing is the KYB suspension. It's got KYB forks and the shock. I'm very happy with the performance on the suspension. Everything on this suspension is completely stock still. The shock is set right in the middle at about 12 clicks on both compression and rebound, and the forks are set up a little bit softer than midline. So I will admit, when I first got the bike, I was having some trouble with the front end. It just didn't feel as good as the 2 other Shercos that I demoed before, and I ended up playing with the suspension quite a bit harder, all the way soft, pretty much everything in between. And I found actually that the common difference is those 2 demo bikes that I used were running either tubeless or heavy duty tubes, and I was on a standard moose. So I went to a soft moose for a couple rides, and now I'm actually on a heavy duty tube. And the front end of the bike, it's almost like a different bike. It feels so much better for me. In the slow stuff, everything was fine before, but it was in the medium and faster pace stuff, the front end didn't feel that stable. And now that I'm back on air, no complaints. So number one good thing on this bike is the KYB suspension. So the first bad thing on the Sherco, you can see I've got an aftermarket chain guide. That's by AXP Racing. It's a good product, very strong. I usually run aftermarket guards, but I didn't put it on right away. And this is the stock chain guard, completely smashed. I rode the bike for maybe 3 hours and I snapped this thing right off. I've bent these before on other brands, but I've never broken one, and it wasn't even that big of a hit. So that's a negative, that the chain guides on these bikes, the stock ones, are not very good. If you're going to get a Sherco, I recommend just replacing that right away. The things I'm going to mention, good and bad, are going to be big things, and some of them are just going to be little things like this one. I really like the brake pedal on this bike a lot more than the KTM's. It's just shorter, it's easier to reach with your feet. I know a lot of people on KTM's and Huskies, they're buying brake tips that go farther back. This is a good brake pedal, it's just the right size for me. Minor thing, but it's just something that I like on this bike. My biggest gripe on the Sherco so far is the quality of the plastics. They seem to break a lot easier. They're a lot more brittle than KTM plastic. You can see how I've stitched this up here. It wasn't even a very big hit, and I cracked the fender. And then on a separate incident right here, I've cracked all this, and even then that seam there is cracked off. So not like I'm taking really big crashes or anything so far. And those are pieces I never broke on KTM's, or rarely did anyways. So the plastics leave a little bit to be desired on the Sherco. Another thing with the plastics is actually the fitment of the plastics is not that good. You can see there's a little bit of a space here. And when I put the fuel tank on, this side will do up nicely. And then down here, once you want to put this on, you actually have to pull all of this down to get that bolt to line up. The plastics just don't fit quite right, and I think that is a very easy thing for Sherco to fix. So it's a little disappointing on a brand new bike with nothing tweaked that the plastics are still not a good fitment. Another thing I'll mention as well, kind of goes along with that, is the fasteners. I'm not too happy with the fasteners on these. You can see most of them are not a Torx, and it's quite a shallow piece there to actually get your socket on. So I'm kind of slowly replacing the bolts. I've got this kit here. I picked this up from Hard Enduro Outfitters online, and it's just a replacement bolt kit, and most of these are Torx. You've got a ton of different sizes, pretty much everything you need on the bike. So as I need to replace things or as I work on the bike, I'm just switching over to these Torx. So yeah, these are working a lot better for me. Again, Hard Enduro Outfitters is who supplied this. Like on the Sherco, the fuel tank. So the fuel tank is a 10.9 liter capacity. So it's a lot bigger than some of the other bikes out there. The KTMs are 8.5, and I believe the Betas are about 10. And the design of this fuel tank is actually quite nice. It looks pretty standard here, but you can see down in here there's this little bubble. And there's probably a liter or so of fuel in there, and that is weight that is down low and right in the center of the bike. So that is a smart design by Sherco on the fuel tank. So another bit of a gripe I have with the Sherco is actually the transmission. I do like the low first gear, and I'm getting used to a wide ratio transmission. I find second gear a bit too short for my preference. But the thing is that I am complaining about is actually I hit neutral on this bike more than any other bike I've ridden. I'm not sure what it is. I've tried to adjust my technique a little bit, and it happens more when I'm sitting down than when I'm standing. But that is a negative on the Sherco, is for some reason I seem to hit neutral on this bike more than others. So something I really like on the Sherco is the seat, the design of the seat. So this little system where you just one bolt there, pull the seat off. It's a really nice seat, nice and light, good seat cover. I really like that system, taking the seat off so easily. So underneath the seat is the air filter. This is a bit of a negative because it's a little bit hard to put this in there and fasten it properly. But when you're taking this filter off and on, it doesn't quite fit out of here, so you have to kind of turn it and pull it out. And it's a little bit hard on the filter itself when you're pressing it in and out. So it's probably going to affect the lifespan of those filters. So underneath the filter is where your battery is. You can see the battery box down there. That's a good placement because, again, you're keeping the weight low and mostly to the center of the bike. So a lot of people with Shercos replace that battery because it's just not that powerful. It doesn't like to start in the morning, particularly in the colder weather. So it's not a necessary upgrade, but it's something a lot of people do. Another minor negative, this one might be kind of hard to see, but you see in here the cylinder head and the spark plug. So the spark plug kind of is a little bit recessed in there. It's not really sitting flush on the top. And the only problem I have with that is if you have to change the spark plug, particularly out on the trail. Now, I've never had to, this is still the original plug at 40 hours. But if you have to, there's all that dirt in there. And it's going to be really hard to not get some of that dirt in your cylinder if you're going to have to do a trail side spark plug change. So if Sherco would design that so it's at flush and you could easily clean that before taking the spark plug off. You know, you don't want to have to take your tank off and everything just to change the spark plug. There's plenty of room in there. But it's a concern with getting dirt into your cylinder if you have to change that plug on the trail. So for 2021, Sherco went to a counterbalance motor. This is a big change for Sherco. They also dropped the weight of the motor a little bit as well, which is good. I wanted to talk a little bit about the counterbalance because no, it is not as smooth as a KTM or Husky, but it is an improvement over the previous years. So some people would shy away because it's not as smooth, but I'm just telling you, it's not a factor at all. When I start the bike in the morning, I'll notice the vibrations. A little bit if I'm ripping down a road, but when you're on the trail, I don't feel it at all unless I specifically think about it. It's plenty smooth enough. It doesn't need to be as smooth as the KTMs. Keep in mind that the way they make it smoother is they put weight on that counterbalancer. The more weight, the smoother it's going to be, but it also comes at a cost of power. So that is going to affect the power of the bike, particularly on the bottom end. So smoother is nice, but it's not necessarily always better. So I'm going to count the counterbalance on the 2021 Sherco as a plus. So I'll just wrap up this review with the last positive on this bike. And it's simply the fun factor. This bike is so much fun to ride. I really, really enjoy riding this bike. I'm glad I made the switch. No regrets, no turning back. I just find I'm riding this bike longer. I'm staying out on the trail longer. I'm just having so much fun. This is a great bike to ride. The power delivery is fantastic. The torque on this bike, it's a hard enduro machine. It just, the harder the trails are, the more this bike likes it. So number 5, good things, is fun factor on the Sherco. I'm going to mention one bonus thing. This is not a good thing or a bad thing. The foot pegs are totally flat. They are not cambered up like a lot of bikes. I know you've probably seen reviews that make a pretty big deal out of the flat foot pegs. I'm going to tell you it's not a big deal at all. It's a little bit different, but this is like 20-30 minutes to get used to if you buy a Sherco. If you want, there's ways to prop these up so they do angle up a little bit, give you a bit of a camber. It's not like you got to go replace them with an expensive aftermarket foot peg if you're not happy with it. But just try it first. It's not really a big deal having flat foot pegs. Thanks for watching. See you next time on PNW Enduro.